And good morning, everybody. This is Vinny Milady, the strongest name in law. The date now is Thursday, July 14th. It is 10:46. If you are following the videos, you notice it's the second video because I'm wearing the same shirt and the time is just 5 minutes after. Okay, so as you know, we're doing these, we're working on a lot of handbooks, working on a lot of employee policies, a lot of personnel policies, and we're doing this just kind of like this general review. And during this process, a lot of questions come up. A lot of and they're healthy, good, generic questions that uh, don't necessarily don't really rely on like a legal analysis, but considering I'm doing this now since 2007, 2006, 2005 maybe, considering yeah, 2005, no, 5 or 7, one of the two. I don't know. It's been a long time. I'm gonna be 40. My brain's not what it used to be, but considering I've been doing this so many years, it's just a lot of like generalized knowledge that I'm more than happy to share. So what we're doing in this series of videos, we're kind of going through questions, we're fielding all the questions that we're getting, we're standardizing them, we're synonymizing them, we're making sure that nobody, they're not tracked back to any particular client or a particular customer, whatever the case is, and that just general guidance going out there. So this is video number 2. This is another question that came in during this. Project was, is it really necessary to have a clause for at-will employment? So, is it really necessary to have a clause for at-will employment? All right. So let's take a step back real quickly. Just discuss what who, what, where, when, why. What all this is. Okay. So at-will employment is, this is like this legal term, this like fancy legal term. Essentially, employment is at will from both parties. The employer employs you at will. You work for the employer at will. So in other words, a contract is not formed binding the parties. Both parties, employer and employee, could basically leave whenever they want for whatever reason whatsoever. So that's essentially what at will is. Why do you put this language in there? What you as an employer are always concerned about is if the handbook creates an implied contract or an express contract, or if the handbook creates a contract of employment. That is what you are always worried about, because what happens in that situation when you have a handbook, you just want to give generalities, you want to give general principles, you don't want to give specificity to each individual person, because you simply can't, because that's not the nature of what a handbook is. That's not like what the function of a handbook is. A handbook is the purpose of the handbook is, well, a couple purposes. One, it's to provide some protection legally, because you get a presumption in your favor if you have a handbook that says, you're anti-discriminatory, anti-retaliatory, stuff like that. But also, a more common reason also is just simply that you want your employees to know what the rules are, what the codes are, what the expectations are, So you have a handbook that answers all these questions. So as opposed to you as the employer having to speak to every single employee individually to give them rules and guidance and updates, you say, hey, did you read the handbook? Handbook has this, handbook has this. Oh, you have a problem? What does the handbook say? Go look at the handbook. And it kind of answers a lot of questions in advance for you. But problem with that is it could create a contract. It could create promises that you have made versus, so let's say the handbook has a disciplinary like a performance improvement plan strategy, like a disciplinary model, right? Where you get in trouble, and so instead of being immediately terminated, you're obligated to get a 30-day performance improvement plan, a 30-day PIP. If that is lined up in your handbook, theoretically, the argument could be made that when they signed on for employment, this is what they were agreeing to. They were agreeing that as part of the terms and conditions of employment, if they were going to get in trouble, they would have this 30-day performance improvement policy, this 30-day performance improvement plan period. So in order to counter that argument that you create this reliance on them, so in order to counter that argument, you're going to want to write in the handbook things like, well, this handbook should not create any express or implied agreement, any express or implied contract. This handbook is at will. The parties could leave for whatever reason. You could be terminated or separated for whatever, any reason that we like, obviously except discriminatory. So an at-will employment clause has a very important function, and you always want to have an at-will employment clause in your handbooks. You never want to disregard it because of the concern that this handbook may be interpreted as an employee contract, which is a huge problem because you didn't prepare this with that in mind. And had you prepared it with that in mind, you might have prepared it differently, right? So, I I always would suggest, and I would always recommend, I would never tell my clients not to, and I would always recommend, always have that at will employment clause. Have it in the paragraph, have it nice and broad. They call it clear and conspicuous. Have it nice and broad at the front of the handbook, maybe in the sections, have its own title, have its own header, and also at the very end of the acknowledgement, make sure it's specified in the acknowledgement. To repeat, this is not a contract. This does not create an indefinite term of employment. This does not create a guaranteed term of employment. It is at will, and you could be terminated if need be. So that's my response to that question. Always have your at will employment clause in your handbook, and always take the proper steps. So, of course, any questions, concerns, certainly email me. Contact us page, vmaletti@maletti.com, website www.maletti.com, MILETTILAW.com, and subscribe to this channel and follow up for more updates. So, as always, yours in law, love, and lips. Stay usually motivated, everybody. Have a good day.